Today I'm going to talk about how to solve the inequalities with fraction coefficients. Okay, now before I solve the following three examples, I would like to recall some rules for the inequalities. Now let's take a look at the rule number one. The rule number one tells us if we add or subtract a number, then the sign of inequality will be the same. For example, here is less than, here should be less than. If it's greater than, there should be greater than. Okay, so for the addition and the subtraction, we are not change the sign of inequality. Okay, now let's take a look. Rule number two and number three. They tell us if we multiply or divide by a positive number, then the sign of inequality will not change. For example, here is greater than, and here should be greater than. If it's less than, here should be less than. Okay, now let's take a look at the last two rules. They tell us if we multiply or divide by a negative number, okay, or divide by a negative number, then the sign of inequality will switch to opposite one. Okay, opposite one. So for example, here is greater than, here should be less than. Okay, and if here is less than, here should be greater than. Okay, so what does that mean? Follow these rules. This rule tells us we don't need to pay attention about the subtraction and addition because the sign of inequality will be kept the same. We need to be care about multiplication and division. Okay, if we multiply or divide by a positive number, the sign of inequality should be the same. However, if we multiply or divide by a negative number, then the sign of inequality should be opposite one. Okay, now let's take a look at the first example. Now as we can see, that equation or that inequality has the fraction, and we know we have the denominator is 4. That means we need a times 4 for both sides. And we have multiplication for both sides, right? And we know here 4 is positive. That means we'll keep the sign the same. Okay, now we can cancel out. 4 cancel out, and the left hand side should be x minus 9, and for the right hand side we have 4 times x, 4 times 12, and we can simplify it. 4x plus 48, and since we have 4x term on the right hand side, we want to remove all the x terms on the right hand side, so that means we're going to subtract 4x for both sides. And we cancel out 4x, and that should be a negative 3x minus 9 less than 48. And now we have a constant negative 9, right? We want to remove it. 9 plus 9 for both sides. Okay, again I want to emphasize again when we do the subtraction, for example, we subtract 4x for both sides, we add 9 for both sides. We will not change the sign because rule number 1 tells us, right? The rule number 1 tells us we shouldn't change the sign. So here we cancel out negative 3x. Here is 57. Okay, and we have negative 3x less than 57. Now we need divide by negative 3x for both sides. Okay, now you need to be careful because we divide by a negative number. That means we're gonna change the sign to opposite one. Here is the less than. That means we have greater than, right? So we have x 57 divided by negative 3 is negative 19. So we can write down as set format. So we have x is greater than negative 19, or we can write down as interval notation. Okay, and then we can draw the graph. So for example, it's negative 19, negative 20, negative 21, and here, and be careful, here we know we don't have the equal sign. That means we're gonna start here. So we're gonna use round bracket. Okay, now let's take a look. The second example. For the second example, we need to remove the fraction, and we're gonna use what? Use the factoring method to find least common multiple. Okay, how to find the least common multiple? So we use factoring method. The first denominator is 13. The second one is 26. 26 can be factored as 2, 13. And now we can find the common factor for both denominators. That is 13. Now we can write down the least common multiple, LCM. That is, we pick the common factor once. Okay, once. And times the left factor, that is 2, 26. Okay. Now we can solve it. We times 26 for both sides in order to remove the fraction. And be careful, since we times a positive 26, that means the sign of inequality should be the same. And then we can simplify it. 26 over 13 should be a 2, right? 2x. And for the right hand side, we can do the distribution. 26 times 1, 26 times negative x over 26. And we can continue to simplify it. 26, here is 26, cancel out, negative x. And on the right hand side, we have negative x. We're going to remove it. We're going to plus x for both sides. And we cancel out. And here 3x is greater than or equal to 26. And then divide by 3 for both sides. Because divide by a positive number, follow the rule here, right? Follow the rule number 3. Then we're gonna keep the sign of inequality. greater than or equal to. And then you're gonna get what? You're gonna get x is greater than or equal to 26/3. Or you can write down as set notation. Or you can write down as interval notation. For the interval notation, you need to be careful because here we have equal sign. So we're gonna use square bracket. Should be 26/3 to infinity. And now you can draw the graph. Okay, 26/3 should be between 8, 9, 10, 7. Okay, so 26/3 should be between 8 and 9, and we should be here. So we can draw the graph like that. Okay, now let's take a look at the last example. For the last example, we're gonna follow the same strategy. We wanted to remove the denominator. How to remove it? We're gonna using the factoring method to find the least common multiple. So here is 8 and 4. 8 can be factored as 2 times 4. 4 can be written as 2 times 2. For this 4, we can write down as 2 times 2. Okay, so now we can find the common factor. For example, here is 2 and 2, and another 2 and 2 here, right? So we have the least common multiple, LCM, should be 2 times 2. We pick the common factors once. Okay, so 2, we just pick once, 2 times 2, and the left one should be 2. So it should be 8. Okay, now we're gonna times 8 for both sides. Times 8 for both sides. Since times 8 is positive, right? It's positive. That means what? That means we will not change the sign of inequality. And for the left hand side, we're gonna do the distribution. We have 8 times -1/8 x plus 8 times 1, and 8 times 1/4 should be 2. Okay, and we can simplify it. -x plus 8 less than or equal to 2. And we can see here we have a constant 8. Okay, constant 8. Now we want to remove it. So we're gonna subtract 8 for both sides. Okay, again, I wanted to emphasize, if we do the subtraction for both sides or addition for both sides, we will not change the sign of inequality. Okay, so here is -x, here is -6. Now here we have -x, we wanted to divide by -1. Here is -6, we want to divide by -1 for both sides. And since -1 is negative, that means we're going to change the sign of inequality to opposite one. So here is less than or equal to. That means here should be greater than or equal to. So we can simplify it. We're gonna get x is greater than or equal to 6. Now you can write down as set notation, or you can write down as interval notation. Be careful for the interval in notation, you're gonna use square bracket because 6 is included, or we have an equal sign. Now you can draw the picture. And we're gonna use the square bracket. Okay, square bracket. So we're gonna have the interval on the x-axis should be like that. Okay,